بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Unit 3, Lesson 2. The Quran, its virtues and its rights. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الصيام والقرآن يشفعان للعبد يوم القيامة يقول الصيام إني منعته الطعام وشهواتي بالنهار فشفعني فيه ويقول القرآن إني منعته النوم بالليل فشفعني قال فيشفعان. In the hereafter, both the Quran and the fasting, they will intercede on behalf of those who carry them out. The Quran will say that, "Oh Allah, I prevented this person from sleep because he used to engage in the recitation of the Quran in tahajjud at night and used to sacrifice his sleep for me. Therefore, intercede on his behalf." And the fasting will also say something similar to this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow both the Quran and the fasting to intercede on behalf of those who carry them out. This is virtue number 1. Virtue number 2. يقال لصاحب القرآن اقرأ وارتقي ورتل كما ترتل في الدنيا فإن منزلك عند آخر آية تقرأ بها. The Prophet ﷺ says, that the one who has memorized the Quran, understands the Quran, and practices upon the Quran, it will be said to him in the hereafter, Iqra, recite, wartaqi, and continue to climb. Iqra wartaqi warattil kama turattilu fi dunya fa inna. So recite the Quran slowly, steadily, gradually, and continue to climb the stairs. Because your station, your position in the hereafter will be in accordance to what or how many verses you memorized in this world. So in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ has used the word Sahibul Quran and not Hafidh al-Quran. The word Hafidh al-Quran means one who has memorized the Quran. The word Sahibul Quran means one who has made the Quran his friend. So Sahib is translated as one who is attached to the Quran. In Urdu we say Sati, a friend, a loyal friend. So a loyal friend of the Quran is that individual who has not only memorized the Quran, he understands the Quran or he understands the translation, and he preaches, he practices, and he preaches. These three qualities are necessary in order for a person to acquire this virtue. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned, Inna lillahi ahlina minan nas. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds dear certain individuals. Sahaba radiyallahu anhu asked, Man hum ya Rasulullah? Who are these individuals? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Hum ahlul Quran, ahlul Quran hum ahlullahi wa khasatuhu. The people of the Quran, they are special friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, the word Ahlul Quran has been used and not Hafidh al-Quran only. Meaning, memorizing the Quran is definitely a great virtue, but assuming this is the final and last stage, and thereafter a person can live his life in accordance to his own whims and fancies, and neglect the message of the Quran is absolutely wrong. Memorization, understanding, practicing, and preaching. These people are the special friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, the one who memorizes the Quran, learns how to read the Quran, however, due to not knowing the language correctly, or due to having incorrect tajweed, or deficiency in tajweed, and he stutters, the word which are used in the hadith are وَيَتَّأْتَأُ. That means he stutters. This deficiency in his recitation. فَلَهُ أَجْرًا. He will receive 2 rewards. One for memorizing, reading, and the second reward is for struggling, making effort. So no person should think that I am a non-Arab or I am an elderly person, therefore I am unable to recite the Quran in its correct manner, so let me just give up. No. There's reward for this person as well. However, a person should continue to do his best and try to recite the Quran with tajweed. I'll mention one last virtue. Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he appointed Nafi' bin Harith rahimallahu ta'ala as the governor of Makkah Mukarramah. They had to meet at a place called Asfan. So when they met, Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu asked Nafi' rahimallahu ta'ala that who did you appoint as your deputy? He said Ibn Abza or Ibn Abzi. Then he said, who's Ibn Abza or who's Ibn Abzi? Nafi said that he was a former slave. So Umar bin Khattab said that you appointed a former slave as the governor of Makkah Mukarramah? How is that possible? So he said, hum or huwa qari'ul Quran. This man who was appointed as the governor, he is a hafiz of the Quran. He is a qari of the Quran. And huwa alimun bil fara'id. And he is an alim and a learned person in respect to the fara'id of the Quran and Hadith. That's why I appointed him. So Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu, at that point he said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he used to say, Inna Allah yarfa'u bihadha al-kitabi aqwama wa yadhu bihi akhirin. That through this book, the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates the status of people, and likewise through this book, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also allows people to fall to their destruction, not because there's any deficiency in the Quran. يَهْدِي بِهِ اللَّهُ وَيُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا. The Quran is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet many groups, Islamic groups who claim to be Muslims, they use the Quran and they are misled. So every single group which consists of falsehood, no one will say anything apart from the fact that the Quran is our mandate. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah will also say the Quran is our mandate, and all the other groups who are not Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah will also say the Quran is our mandate. Then why is it that people go astray? They go astray because they distort the meanings of the Quran. They distort the interpretations and explanations of the Quran according to their whims and fancies. I'll give you one example. The group Qadiani, which is headed by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, he used to say that wherever the word Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is mentioned in the Quran or Hadith, that is referring to me, na'udhu billah. This was his belief, and his followers also hold this belief. Muhammad Rasulullah. Muhammad is Allah's messenger. Which Muhammad? Our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he used to say that Muhammad is being referred to as me. I am na'udhu billah, and I am Allah's messenger. So if someone does not have this belief, they are not a Muslim. So people or groups, they distort the meanings, interpretations, explanations, and they go astray. So we can only take those meanings which have been passed down to us by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, through the fuqaha, muhaddithin, through ulama ikram, reliable, authentic ulama ikram. The Quran has three rights. Number one, recitation. Two, understanding. And three, practicing / preaching. So recitation, the Quran should be recited with tajweed. Number two, we should try to sit in the durus, in the circles of ilm, of ulama ikram, and try to understand the Quran. Again, not through our own intellect, through reliable sources. Those interpretations which are considered to be authentic. Otherwise, there are many interpretations on the market, and not all of these interpretations are taken, and neither should they be taken. And number three, once we have taken reliable knowledge from reliable ulama ikram, we need to practice and preach. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to understand and implement wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Sadaqallahu al-azim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونسترضيه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We stopped last time at just on the mushrikeen and the people of Quraysh, that they had the niyyah, or the intention, that now we're going to pick one from every tribe and go to the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and they will strike the body of the Prophet ﷺ and will kill him, and that way his blood is not going to be owned by one tribe, it's going to be owned by many deaths. So Banu Abdul Manaf and Banu Abu Talib and all these people of the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, they cannot take the revenge against anything. So there is no war, there is no anything of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to the Prophet that this is going to happen that night. So this was the night that was given the izn of the Prophet ﷺ to make the beginning of the hijrah. So the Prophet ﷺ has told before, and I'm just summarizing quick what we have so we can be on the same thing. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was preparing 2 camels and all this to be prepared for when the Prophet ﷺ will make it. Not sure about what day. All this time, not sure about what day. And everything was very secretive. Even the day that the Prophet ﷺ moved for the hijrah at night, he did not tell Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq that day. SubhanAllah. He didn't tell him, like, I'll see you at night. Not even that. So the Prophet ﷺ, and we talked about that, is he got Abdullah ibn Urayqit, and he was the one to tell him the way. So he was the guide in the Sahara, in the desert of Saudi area, to tell him the way from Mecca to the Medina. And Abdullah ibn Urayqit was not Muslim, and we talked about that before, and how there is a lot of fiqh about al-mu'amalat and all this, subhanAllah, despite the reward that we'll see that was put on the head of the Prophet ﷺ, that he did not change. And the Prophet knew that he has this honesty in him and he will fulfill his way. And he told him, we'll see you in Ghar Thawr, in the cave of Thawr, in 3 days. So meet us in Ghar Thawr, the cave of Thawr, in about 3 days. Ghar Thawr. And subhanAllah, so this was the beginning. All the people gathered around the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and they looked through the door and found the Prophet ﷺ. And they said like, okay, we're just going to wait until the night time. Nobody is going to know and all this. And we were waiting. And of course, وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. So they got that, and then the Prophet ﷺ, as soon as the time of the night came, he went outside the door and had some حفنة من التراب, so part of dust in his hand, and then he threw this on their heads and their faces, and they cannot see. SubhanAllah, this is a clear miracle from Allah, that he is going through them and they cannot see him while he's going. And he had Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib laying in his bed, and he covered with his burda, with his like burda, and he was saying وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يَبْصُرُونَ وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يَبْصُرُونَ وَجَعَلْنَا So continuously, subhanAllah, and we talked about, subhanAllah, there are some ayat that the Prophet ﷺ used in his dua to show us there is a lot of keys in the Quran that Allah can utilize us to use it, subhanAllah, with the will of Allah. With the will of Allah, to make something happen with the will of Allah. SubhanAllah, not to derail too much, who is the one who made them unable to see the Prophet ﷺ with all this hiss and the retina and the vision and all this, and the Prophet physically moving around them? That's obviously from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Barakat al-Quran and the dust and the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet is following the means to it. But we have to understand, not because of the dust and not because even of the verse of the Quran, all that, it is all with the will of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ, the same as in the rest of the stories of all the Prophet ﷺ, the stick is not the one that parted the sea. Obviously, it is the will of Allah, but using the stick is to give Musa and all that. This is the tool that you have to do it, subhanAllah. Was it needed? No, subhanAllah, it's all by the will of Allah. So it is important for understanding this. They moved, subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ got out of the door and did the dua on them. They did not see him. Immediately went to the house of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and the one who's telling us this is Sayyida Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anha wa ardaha. And they saying like he was very hasty. The Prophet told him, come on. It's almost like very fahathahuma, that they are going very fast, that let's take the ride and now we're going to go out. So they took the camels with the food on it and all this and moved to the Ghar Thawr. This Ghar Thawr, we talked about that last time. It's about how much between Ghar Thawr and Mecca. SubhanAllah, if Mecca and Ghar Thawr is about 5.3 miles. So very short distance, not very far. So it's not like, you need to understand this. We're not talking about Mecca to Al-Madinah. This is also like very important to understand. When they started the Hijrah, they did not go immediately to the Medina. This is from the planning that we need to understand. And they stayed in Ghar Thawr how many days? They stayed in Ghar Thawr 3 days. SubhanAllah, 3 days, almost in between everybody in Mecca. All these people are going to be coming. They are wanting to kill him, and they are coming to watch him and all this, subhanAllah. So he is in the middle still of the Mecca territory and all that for 3 days. And subhanAllah, as soon as he come out of Mecca, he stood up. And this is in the Hadith al-Sahih. And this is fi sanad sahih an Ibn Abbas. And the other sanad is, Wallahi innaki la khayru ardillah. The Prophet ﷺ stood on the hill facing the Kaaba and say, Wallahi innaki la khayru ardillah. You are by Allah the best spot on this earth. Wa ahabbu ardullah ilallah. And the best place that beloved to Allah, subhanAllah. The one who is saying that, we have to understand the Prophet ﷺ. When you say, my best place is my hometown, or this is like in India, I love this, or Pakistan, I like this, or maybe Egypt, or in Iraq, this, subhanAllah. It doesn't matter. What is matter is what ahabbu ardullah ilallah. what is the best spot that Allah loves on this earth is Mecca. By saying of the Prophet ﷺ, no competition on that. So you take this as your landmark. Mecca is the best place for me, and have the love of it in your heart. Done. Subhanallah, sami'na wa ata'na. There is no question about that. وَأَحَبُّ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ لَوْلَا إِنِّي أُخْرِجْتُ مِنْكِ مَنْ خَرَجْتُ. And if I was not exiled from you or getting out from you, I would not get out. Subhanallah. This is my spot. This is the best spot by Allah. And if the people did not get me out of this, I would not left. Subhanallah. This was آخر عهد Rasulullah بمكة. This is the last minute of the Prophet ﷺ seeing Al-Kaaba before he leaves. Subhanallah. To show you how much affection and heart and emotions toward Mecca, subhanallah, in the Prophet ﷺ. He stayed about 3 days in the Ghar and going to there, and then I want you to take note of what I'm going to tell you, inshallah. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, subhanallah, he was the full support and coverage with the for the help of the Prophet ﷺ. That's why he has like the best rank among all the companions. Is it only Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and his camels and the food and all that? Let's write down from the family of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Number 1, Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr. Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr. This is the son of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anhu arda. And subhanallah, he was giving a function to be almost the spy of what is happening in Mecca. So this is, subhanallah, we can spend, wallahi, like month to talk about the planning for the hijrah. But subhanallah, we're just going very fast for the sake of time and the summarized version. Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr at that time, he was youth. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha wa ardaha say, وَهُوَ غُلَامٌ شَابٌ ثَقِفٌ لَقٍ. He is a smart youth and he is very eloquent in his talk. What does that mean? Like if somebody stop him and ask him, where are you coming? What are you doing? All that. He's able to get out of that with his eloquency. لَقٍ. وهو شاب ثقف لق فيدلج من عندنا بسحر. So he leave the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq at night, leaving the house every night at night. And فيصبح مع قريش. So he's staying between all this 5.3 miles between the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and the Ghar Thawr. Ghar Thawr and the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Subhanallah. Back and forth every night. For how many nights? 3 nights. Spending the night with them in the Ghar, and then coming before the daytime to be like in Mecca among the people. People see him and all that. Hear from them what's the planning, where they're going, how many people, what's happening. The full spy eye inside Mecca. Every night like that. And coming there at the night time. Subhanallah. The second one, Amir ibn Fuhayra. Amir ibn Fuhayra. Who's Amir ibn Fuhayra? He's Mawla Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Mawla Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He is the servant of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Subhanallah. So he used to come, he's serving Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So he was giving some lambs and goats and stuff like that to be as if making ra'i for the house of Abu Bakr, as covering, everything is going normal. At the same time, he is covering all the traces of Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr, all these places that between Abu Bakr's house and Ghar Thawr. Nobody can ever expect anything. There is no traces or anything. And we'll see that because Quraysh was also very smart. They got a guide as well to look at the places of feet and all this, subhanallah. He will also go every night, 3 nights, between the house of Abu Bakr to Ghar Thawr, every night. And Ibn Ishaq saying, فَإِنَّ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ بْنَ أَبِي بَكْرَ غَدَى مِنْ عِنْدُهُمْ إِلَى مَكَّةَ اتبع عامر بن فهيرة أثره بالغنم حتى يعفى عليه. So he was following all the footsteps of Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr, so to cover all the traces. If there is any footsteps going on, he will, the goats and lambs and all this go through it. Subhanallah, there is no traces. So far, these are all from the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu arda. The third one, which we are already know and very famous for all of us, is Sayyidah Asma bint Abi Bakr. Subhanallah. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, his daughter Asma, his son Abdullah, his other daughter Aisha, subhanallah, they are the family of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Wallahi, they lived, they protected, they give nusra, that we can never even like talk about, subhanAllah. Sayyidah Asma, she will make the food and take it to them, to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in Ghar Thawr. She told Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and this has two ahadith. I'm going to mention the one in Sahih Muslim. Sahih Muslim. So very authentic, that أنا والله ذات النطاقين. She is saying, by Allah, I am ذات النطاقين. أما أحدهما فكنت أرفع به طعام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وطعام أبي بكر, her father. So one of the nitaq, what is the nitaq to begin with? Nitaq is like the belt that women wear to keep their dress from reaching the floor. So it's kind of like raising a little bit the dress or the thawb and then keep it like that. So it's like a big belt of cloth. So she didn't find anything in the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq except her nitaq. So she cut it. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq told her to cut it to two halves. One of them was holding, it's almost like a fanny pack or something, to hold the food for the sufra. They call it the sufra of the food for the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام وطعام أبي بكر من الدواب. وأما الآخر فنطاق المرأة التي لا تستغني عنها. The other one is what the woman has to use that she cannot have. Subhanallah. At that time, they didn't have any like cloth like what we have, the women have for dresses and all that. So they did have, this was essential for women. So she used part of it for herself and part to carry the food to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Imam al-Nawawi say this is the most new, authentic version of Sahih Muslim, because there is another version that nitaqain, one of them was for the food and the other one for the water, but we'll go with the Sahih Muslim. And inshallah, we'll conclude with very important 2 points, inshallah. The mushrikun now, they went to follow the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And at that time, they were still around the house. And somebody came and say, what are you doing? And they are saying, we are waiting for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and we are waiting for and he told them, Wallahi, you don't have any idea. He already left. And you have dust on your hair and on your head, and he threw dust on you. So they touched each body and found the dust on their head, and they did not believe him. They looked again through the door and found somebody with the cover on him. Again, the plan of the Prophet ﷺ, not just to leave the place empty. So they stayed until the subh. Say, we're going to go until the fajr time. And then, subhanAllah, they went into the house and they found it Ali radiallahu anhu arda, and they said the man who came us at night was actually true and was right. So they knew that they lost the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and starting the chase, and started to have people to trace the tracks on earth and see where is possible to go. What is it possible, like which direction? At that time, there is no indication where is he going to go. And they give reward for 100 naqa, 100 camel. And subhanAllah, this is, in this modern times, it's almost like a $1 million, to give an example. It's almost like giving somebody 100 cars of like Tesla or Mercedes or something. Huge. I mean, like just to bring, and this is important so you understand that nobody can. And if you can imagine that the Abdullah ibn Urayqat that would give this and give them the Prophet ﷺ, he stayed 3 nights. SubhanAllah, the Prophet was true that about his honesty, that he's not going to sell that for money, even that he's kafir. He's not even Muslim. SubhanAllah. And last thing, inshallah, we know in the Quran, إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ, the Quran. SubhanAllah, and we'll conclude with that. The cave is, I don't know if anybody have seen Ghar Thawr, and subhanAllah, if you go in it, it is a little bit under the level of the earth. So you can be, your face is here, and you cannot see the footsteps here. So you can see it like this. And it is like you have to go down to see what is inside the cave. And subhanAllah, they were the riwayat al-Shaykhan fi sahihihima wa love the Muslim, that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, a group of people came to the cave. And subhanAllah, they came to the cave at that time, and subhanAllah, they looked at the cave and they did not even try to look underneath them. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, of course, was extremely worried and anxious and was whispering to the Prophet ﷺ, if somebody looked under his feet, they will see us. Subhanallah. If somebody looked under his feet, they will see us. The Prophet ﷺ told him, and this love the Muslim. This is in love Muslim that يا أبا بكر ما ظنك بإثنين الله ثالثهما. What do you think of two that Allah is the third of them? Subhanallah. And loves Bukhari, in loves Bukhari that Subhanallah, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq say, لو بعضهم طأطأ رأسه بصره رآنا. If somebody just looked, not even need to go down, if somebody just looked under his feet, they will see us. There is nothing to keep us from being seen, Subhanallah. The Prophet ﷺ say, اسكت يا أبا بكر اثنان الله ثالثهما. اسكت يا أبا بكر اثنان الله ثالثهما. What is the meaning of اثنان الله ثالثهما? Subhanallah. Al-Hafiz في كتاب الفتح, Subhanallah, they say, of course, Allah is always with two people. Allah is the third one. We know from Surah Al-Mujadala, ما يكون من نجوى ثلاثة إلا هو رابعهم ولا خمسة إلا هو سادسهم. So Allah, with His ilm, is always with the people. What is the meaning here? The Hafiz fi al-Fath say it means with His nasrah, with His victory, with His support to the Prophet ﷺ and Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Al-Imam ibn Jarir, this is Tafsir al-Tabari, will conclude with that Allah is telling them and telling the Sahaba and telling everybody that, Subhanallah, whether you support him or not support him, whether you give him victory or not give him victory, Allah is giving him victory, Subhanallah. That's exactly the meaning, Subhanallah. صرف الله قلوب الأبصار. If Allah can blind everyone, whether the Sahaba support or not support, whether you support or not support, Allah is ينصر هذا الدين وينصر the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, not needing us, not needing you, not needing the companion. So Allah at the beginning of the da'wah and beginning of this hijrah and say, Subhanallah, that this is not needed from any help of you. He was in the middle of all the tribes to coming to kill him and nobody could see him, Subhanallah. And then the Quran of course came, إلا تنصروه فقد نصره الله إذ أخرجه الذين كفروا ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا in Surah Tawbah. Subhanallah, this deen and the victory and the support does not need you. It just gives you the honor and the reward to be part of this journey, Subhanallah, and to give whatever something small to have the nusra for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We'll stop here, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين والعاقبة للمتقين أما بعد. Inshallah, we'll go through our topic from last time and inshallah a new one quickly. We were discussing the safar, the journey that a person undertakes and how salah should be performed. Journeys we know are of two types. A person takes on a worldly journey or he takes on a religious journey. Religious journey means a person goes to Hajj, he goes to Umrah, he goes to any of the three masajid, Masjid al-Haram, Masjid al-Nabawi, Masjid al-Aqsa, that a person can intend to go there, offer prayer, and that would be valid. And also to Madinatul Munawwara to visit Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is also part of the religious journey, and a person gets rewarded for that. Hajj, Umrah, all of that. And the worldly journey, meaning a person goes to another city for business purposes, for college, for education, to get married, all of that. And both are allowed, both kinds of journeys. And a person in those journeys has to make qasr salah. We know, especially according to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, it is wajib, it is necessary that a person cuts his salah short, meaning every 4 rakat of prayer, he would only do 2. And that is mandatory, not optional. According to Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, it is optional. Rather, he says it is better that a person performs full prayer even while he is on a journey. But according to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, it is necessary that he shortens his prayer. The time period of qasr is our next part of it, that a traveler will continue making qasr of fard salah until he returns and enters the city. Meaning he comes back to his own city, and the moment he enters into the boundaries, he will stop making qasr. Qasr will fall away when he makes the intention of becoming resident for 15 days or more in a town or city. Wherever a person goes, and if he intends to stay for more than 15 days or more, then he will no longer be a musafir. So even if he had just arrived there, but he wants to stay for 20 days, for example, in any city, he would perform full prayer. Sometimes people have this misconception and they say that first 3 days are fine. The first 3 days you can offer qasr, even if you're intending to stay for a whole month. And after the first 3 days, you can start praying full. No. In that case, the moment you arrive in a new city that you're intending to stay for more than 15 days, you will pray the whole salah. Meaning that not just full rakat of every prayer, but also the sunan and as well, especially the sunan mu'akkada. If one intends to be a resident for less than 15 days, he will continue making qasr. Again, very simple to understand. If a person wants to stay in a city for less than 15 days, he will continue to make qasr. Similarly, if one does not make the intention of becoming a resident and he remains for years without making the intention, he will continue making qasr. And this actually happened with some of the companions, that they went to a city far away. They were musafir there. Their intention was, we're only going to stay here for a couple weeks, then we'll move on. Towards the end of that couple weeks, they extended their stay for another couple weeks, less than 15 days. They continued to do that until 2-3 years have passed and they're still making qasr. Why? Because they had not yet made intention for immediate that we will be going to be staying for 15 days or more. Their intention always was to stay less than 15 days. It's just that they continue to extend that, but since the intention was still to stay for less than 2 weeks or less than 15 days, they continue to make qasr. And this is allowed. This is not, again, a loophole that a person says he knows that I'm going to stay there for 2 months, but then he says, you know what, I'm only going to be here for 14 days. And then after 14 days, I will extend my niyyah. No, this is for genuinely that a person actually does not wish to remain there for more than 2 weeks, but circumstances happen, situation is becoming difficult, and that made him extend his stay, then he will continue to pray qasr. Now the salah regarding a musafir following a muqim and vice versa. This happens quite often, that sometimes the imam is a musafir, and sometimes the muqtadi is a musafir praying behind the imam. The first point, it is permissible for a musafir, for a traveler, to follow a muqim meaning resident in salah, and he will complete 4 rakat following the imam. It's very simple for us to understand. That even if a person himself is a musafir, but if he goes to any masjid or he prays behind an imam that is a muqim, that is a resident, that even this musafir will not cut his salah short at that moment. Rather, he would pray the full salah behind the imam. It is permissible for a muqim to also follow a musafir, traveler. If a traveler leads the residents, the muqim, it is appropriate for the traveler to say and let the people know that, hey, complete your salah. Once I'm done, I am a traveler. Before beginning the salah and after completing it as well. So that the people that came later know that they're supposed to get up and finish their prayer. So imam can also be a musafir. In that case, imam would finish his 2 rakat, and after that he would just make an announcement that I am a musafir, please complete your salah. So the muqtadis would get up and finish their 2 rakat. And the last point is very important because this is actually a question that I am asked a lot. That if a person misses his salah while he was traveling, so when he comes back, would he make qaza of the 2 rakat or the 4 rakat? It's the principle behind is wherever you missed your prayer, that is what's going to count. If you were a muqim at the time, if you were not a traveler, you were a resident and you missed your prayer, then even while you're traveling, you will make up full 4 rakat of qaza. You will not say that now since I'm traveling, I can make qaza of only 2 rakat. No. Similarly, if a person missed his salah while he was traveling, then he will make up for it also similarly only 2 rakat. Even when he comes back home and he's no longer a musafir. But still he will only make up 2 rakat. Why? Because when he missed, he was a musafir. So that's what really counts. When exactly you missed. If you are a musafir, then no matter where you are, you will only offer 2 rakat. But if you are a muqim, you are a resident, that's when you missed your prayer. Then even if you're traveling, you will make up for full 4 rakat. Types of watan and their laws. A term you might be familiar with, watan asli. It means permanent residence. Fuqaha have defined watan asli as a place which meets any of these 3 following conditions. Number 1, where a person is born and he currently lives. That usually happens. You're born in a city and you live there, and that is your watan asli. Meaning the moment you arrive in that city's boundary, you will no longer be a musafir. Number 2, where a person has married and thereafter lives with his family for the rest of his life. That is also quite common, that you married in another city and you moved there, so that becomes your permanent residence. Number 3, where a person moves and intends to live for the rest of his life. He moves to another country for work reason, whatever, and then he decided to stay there. That becomes his watan asli, his original home. Therefore, the fuqaha have stated a rule that a new watan asli can and will eliminate the former watan asli, meaning the old permanent residence will no longer be his permanent residence. It can change. And this is something that most of the people here have experienced. For example, a person who was living in Pakistan, India, and that was his watan asli, but then he left that and moved to the United States. So that back home is no longer his watan asli. If he goes there, he will be a musafir if he intends to stay for less than 15 days. And this is a point that we will learn as well. And this is also a question that quite often I'm asked that, but our parents live there, and our parents' house is also our house. So would that no longer, would that be considered our watan asli as well? No. The parents' house is not considered the house of a child, even though you have a stake in that house, even though you are inheritor of the house later on. But right now, that house belongs to the parents, and the parents are alive. So it doesn't matter if you spend your childhood over there, but now this person lives in Texas, and the parents live in any other city, other part of the world. So if he goes back over there, he will be a musafir if he intends to stay for less than 15 days. This is where the concept, but if sometimes a person can actually have multiple watan aslis. For example, a person has his own house in the same city as his parents. So because of his own house is there, whenever he goes back there to visit his parents, he will no longer be a musafir because his own house is over there as well and his luggage is over there as well. Or a person moves out of the house, he marries, goes and lives in another city, and that city becomes his permanent residence, watani asli. And then he's a Muslim, so he marries another woman and he gets her a house in another city. So now he has two houses, meaning in both of those cities, both of those cities would be his watani asli, his permanent residence. Meaning if he were to visit one wife 1 week and the other wife next week, he would be praying full prayer. No qasr for him. However, when a person marries elsewhere and makes that place his watani asli, when he returns to visit his parents, the same thing I mentioned, then his parents' house will no longer be considered his permanent residence, his watani asli. Rather, it will be considered his watani iqama. Watani iqama now is the second watan, meaning a place of temporary residence, meaning he has planned to stay in any place for 15 days or longer, then that place becomes his watani iqama, temporary residence, meaning he will be praying his full prayer over there. A bit about watani iqama. The place that a person intends to stay in for a period of 15 days or more, that will be considered his temporary residence. Watani iqama, the temporary residence, is nullified by another watani iqama. Easy to understand. A person is traveling and he plans to stay in one city for 15 days and then another city for 15 days and then another city for 15 days. So when he stays here for 15 days, he's of course not a musafir. But then he moves to another city, and then because he moves to another city and makes that city his temporary residence, the first one will be cancelled. Meaning if he were to return to the first place, he will be a musafir. Because it's cancelled anymore. He only planned to stay there for 15 days, 16 days. So what they're telling is that watani iqama, the temporary residence, can be nullified if a person moves on to another city. This question actually, I get asked a lot as well, and it's very important to understand. Let's take Pakistan as an example. A person goes to Pakistan, he has 30 days of vacation. He goes there, and he says, well, I'm planning to live in Pakistan for 30 days, but not all in the same space, same area. Of course, I'll go to Lahore, and I'll stay there for 10 days. But after that, we plan to go on to northern areas, right? So in that case, he will still be a musafir. Because even though his Pakistan stay is for 30 days, but he's not planning to stay in one location, one area. He's going to be 10 days in Lahore, then he's going to move on to another new city. And that means he'll be musafir here for 10 days, and then 10 days in another city, he will be a musafir. 10 days in another city, he will be a musafir. But he's not planning to stay in any of the locations for more than 15 days. Watani iqama, the temporary residence, is nullified by traveling from it. As I mentioned, if you move on, that will no longer be considered your temporary watani iqama. Watani iqama is also nullified by returning to watani asli, that you come back to your original location, your place of permanent residence. Then, of course, the watani iqama will also be nullified. Meaning, if you were to go back to that place, you will be a musafir. Inshallah, these were a few things regarding the salat of the safar, and also the salat regarding the watan, which is considered our temporary or permanent residence. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand this. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Oh yeah, actually, I was planning to bring the papers today. I just completely forgot. But they are graded. I don't think anybody got more than